welcome to this new podcast series, The Female Trickster. This is part of a wider project called The Other Tricksters. In this series, I interview artists, curators, a clown, performers and dancers, all of them based in Gothenburg, Sweden. This is so I could investigate the trickster element within their work. All of these interviews are very loosely held conversations, with the trickster weaving in and out of them. Each interviewee I invited to make a sound work, which you will hear in the middle of each interview. Today's conversation is with Linda Wardal. Linda is a contemporary choreographer, a dance artist, and works with a group called Spin as a teacher. In this conversation with Linda, we go into architecture, how space affects us, how it changes the way we work, a bit of spirituality, and also a little bit about how we work just when we're thinking. This was a really enjoyable conversation, and I hope you like it too. I was trying to think of where I should start with you, because I was thinking your practice has dominatingly been this dance, to think of dance. But it was interesting because where I met you, you were doing something much more like, it was very much a conceptual film that you made with that work. So I was going to ask you where you think that lies. Like, do you have more of a domination of dance in your practice? I don't think you have to be one or the other. But it's interesting to sort of just tweezer out where you think of yourself.
Actually, I mean, it's funny when people wants to ask you what kind of art do you do?
Yeah, I mean, the worst question ever as well, isn't it? It's just that,
I think it varies so much depending on the year and what I read, what documentaries I watch and what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say that my main practice is dance. And when we met, we went to a course together called Feminist...
I think feminist performance practice? Perspectives? Maybe.
Well, everything is entangled anyway.
Yeah. Focusing on performance and feminism.
And I think that I was challenged to do stuff that I normally don't do. You've also challenged me a bit by making some kind of recording. And I ask myself, can I do this? It feels a bit like because what I sent to you was a mixture of noises and sound, and it became almost like a collage, just interpreting the female trickster. Yeah. And it's almost like, can I do this? I don't have the knowledge, but can I do this? And I think that's also what the female trickster is about in a way, like just saying that you can do something and see the result of it. And sometimes when I look at any kind of performance art on stage and I see how they've discovered something through play, like sometimes you see this amazing costumes or someone just playing with light bulbs and the result is amazing. And I think by letting yourself do things that you normally don't do, that's when the magic happens. That's when you find something new. I'm also a bit surprised that I made a film. And maybe I'm not so good at taking it seriously or saying or acknowledging that it is a film, because I'm still like, but I'm still trying things out, and I'm not a filmmaker. But then somehow during the way it became a short film.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, and I should just embrace that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can really suffocate ourselves by saying, I'm this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's... And then we kind of... I wonder... Because we're talking Trickster. I wonder if it's like we fail to trick ourselves. We hold ourselves to a structure of like, well, a dancer looks like this. And then it's like, oh, well, all of it's mostly just ideas expressed in whatever way we can. I think most artists do this thing of just taking whatever they've got to hand and then going, okay, well, nope, I don't think this can. I think this can only be expressed by tomato ketchup. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the only way. And I mean, that I'm being flippant, but like maybe that's it. We just have to trick ourselves into producing. I don't know why we need to keep on producing, but it's interesting that I think we try and trick maybe ourselves into finding something out.
But I think we need to produce because, I don't know, I see like how everything is created. I mean, I somehow believe in a God. And I have the feeling that something have been created and that we are also somehow a multiplicity of that creator, let's say. And then we are also creators. Like we're just, I don't know, I think it's in our genes that we need to create. We can create life, we can create art. But in different ways, of course. People have different urges to do so.
But you think it's kind of maybe an innate part of spirituality to be able to create?
Yeah, I think so.
And and do you mind me asking, do you believe in a Christian God?
That is also, I could say yes and no to that. It's a bigger question, I think. It's like if I would say it's a Christian God, then there are a lot of other questions behind that. Or like, because there are so many ways of pressing religion into a box, and I don't agree to many of those formats.
Yeah.
But I for sure believe that there is a higher dimension.
But I think that comes into a lot of people's lives because they're not quite atheist, but they're not quite religious. But they're somewhere in between this agnostic / believe in something.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I need the religion as well.
Okay.
Because I can't figure it out myself. And I think also like churches or mosques or all these congregations together, I think people can do greater things together. I mean, people also starts different wars and a lot of awful things. But I also find it important to be part of a group that can discuss spirituality and they can somehow grow both into their beliefs and their disbeliefs and questions. So I think, it's interesting how we got into this, but I think it's all connected somehow.
And do you think that turns up in your practice, in your work, that this sort of
all the questions? Yeah, I think it's a matter of always asking yourself questions and questioning your choices, questioning our society, questioning why things look the way they do. So I think it kind of makes sense to me that being spiritual is also very related to being an artist, asking yourself the bigger questions. Because I think that's a wonderful part of our job, that we get to actually think a lot about things that you normally don't have time for if you have a 9-to-5 office job.
Yeah.
Maybe. Some might, but...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about the weird scrabble to succeed at being an artist. I was talking about this the other day, because that seems very time consuming. So I wonder sometimes if people in offices get a chance to stop. Stop working. Kind of as an art practice, I don't know if you get to stop working.
Yeah.
So I wonder if sometimes they get that rest time to think. And rather than it being your job. But
Yeah.
but just as I'm never sure certain about who gets all this leisure thinking time.
Yeah, I had this question or this discussion with a friend, and she's a teacher, and she has some hours for preparing her work, her teaching.
Yeah.
But there was also some hours during the week that her boss is not allowed to ask her what she does with it, but it's mainly for like talking to parents and doing all this like can you say maybe hidden hours or like that are unpredictable what you're gonna spend time on doing. But I just figured that it was very nice that she had this trust that you have also this amount of time, because we know that things will come up that is not necessarily in the plan or that we can predict what it is. And I was thinking about that also, that we are somehow lacking time to just think. But I think in general, artists, therapists, priests, many people would gain a lot by just having half a day a week where it says sit by the ocean.
Yeah. Space seems quite important to that.
Yeah.
That time.
Space, and also space within rooms. Like noticing the height of the ceiling, for example. I feel like that makes me more creative.
Explain. I don't know what you mean.
I feel like if I'm in a narrow place or like a small, like right now I have quite a small apartment, and I feel so much more free when I have space, more space between the walls and between the floor and the ceiling. So
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, so I'm living in a very tiny flat with my partner. And it's basically one room. You have, we have a little bathroom and a kitchen. The kitchen is a cupboard and the bathroom's pretty small. And then it's just a sleeping area.
Yeah.
It's the first time we've lived like that before. And it definitely affects the space. I think both of us need a lot of space to think, to see, because to just in a way to click all your brain back into place.
Yeah.
But you actually think it's physical space, because I think that's a bit more like because there's another human there.
No, I think it's both. Also, when I'm in a dance studio, it's so different when you come into a room and it's like an enormous space and what you can do with the body, or you can just how can I explain this? I don't know, it's just a physical impact on my body. It responds to the distance of the walls and distance to...
So kind of like a potential. Like there's space there of potential of movement.
But then, of course, like, I can... I'm also... If I find a space which is really interesting, it could also be a small space could be a possible performance space or a stage. For example, there is a place close to Sockerbruket, which is like a small bicycle space it's like an open space, but it has like a small roof, and it has lights. And in the night, it's dark outside, but there's still some lights on these bicycles. And I think it's such a tiny and cute performance space.
Do you know, I know that bike shelter well.
Yeah.
Because my studio is opposite.
Ah.
So I can look down on that bike shelter. But yeah, I think it is a performative space. That's interesting. So there's something interesting there about thinking about architecture. That architecture frames or curates a potential of action in something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so actually I'm going to take us back to the video work that you made. Because thinking about the fact that you did that in like a laundry, like a room off a laundry room.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and that was a very restricted space. And also it was sort of in the basement.
Yeah.
So I always remember that the feet were going, so that you sometimes saw these little feet behind you.
Yeah, from the outside.
From the outside. And in fact, there was one with like a little dog.
Yeah.
Just walking past. And there was something very bizarre about that space to then be exploring and working with. So I mean, it's interesting as how I like the open space to think, but then I'm curious about if you maybe choose spaces to create thought.
Well, I think the fact that I live in a small apartment just above that laundry room.
Yeah.
When I go down there, it's like, okay, I recorded this video. It's about a lamp character that is doing, well, we don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's inside of the laundry room without any laundry and having all these thoughts and discussions with itself. And how it came about, I think I feel quite comfortable being down there because maybe it's also the emptiness, like it's 4 smaller rooms. So you enter the laundry room, and to the right you have like one space where you put up your laundry to dry. So that's like one room, and then there's another one, and then there's the room where you have the washing machines, the laundry machines.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think the lack of having those empty spaces for artists actually in Gothenburg today. There's a lot of like restrictions in a way, like you need to pay a certain amount of money to have a space and to have a proper space where you can actually have a good floor and where you can have seated audience. So like to find these kind of small potential areas where you can be for free if you book the laundry room, then that makes me creative.
I think that's so interesting, and also very very Trickster. Because it's about, it's finding something from nothing to make sure that this happens.
I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
But also I had to call my good friend and neighbor and asking him to book the other. You can be 2 at the same time doing your laundry there. So I have to tell him a few times, can you book the machines again because I need the space? He was like, yeah, sure. No questions asked. She's doing art again.
But I think this is the question that I think I've been trying to ask, is this sort of weird way of using charm. Like, it's using charm, isn't it? It's using that your friend likes you enough to be like, yeah, okay, I'll book that. I'll make this thing that's a little inconvenient, but I'll do my washing now. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she needs to do art.
This poor artist.
This artist that just...
She doesn't have a space. Can she have the laundry room at 8 o'clock every Monday, please? Oh, it's a bit sad, isn't it?
But I mean, but is it sad or is it really cunning? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're using what you have to make something. So it could, but I think also maybe tricksters are both. Maybe tricksters are a little bit sad and a little bit has the potential for all these things as well as being cunning.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, after making so many applications and you never receive the full funding that you ask for, and you might have to apply for 4 or 5 different ones, and you might get 1 or 2. And that is also, we have a Swedish expression, trolla med knäna. It's like making magic with your knees. That's the translation for it. And it's like, how do you make... I'm sure there's enough English version, like how to make a out of a... you can make soup out of a nail as well.
Stone. We have stone soup.
Stone soup.
Stone soup, which is actually like, interestingly, that was a story I was told when I was at school. Stone soup, which was like a Christian tale.
Okay.
So interesting that came back. Stone soup. But this
everything's entangled.
Yeah. But it was stone soup is sort of this old lady turns up to somebody's house and she's like, I need some food, and they were sort of like, oh, we don't have any food, and she was like, but I have this special stone. That you can make soup from the stone, and I will make you food and with my stone soup. And then she just has the stone in the pot of water, and then she just sort of says, we should add some carrots to this stone soup. And it's a sort of slow process, but it like adds carrots and then adds vegetables, and I think adds meat even maybe, and then eventually it's like this amazing stone soup just made from a stone. But this thing of, but then the trusting of somebody to that, and then there was enough food for everyone, I think, is the kind of the story level of it. But I mean, there was always these wily old ladies in the Christian tales I was told as a kid.
I think that's spot on. What kind of the life of an artist, really. Like, you have to make magic with what you have, I guess. And I think we're so used to like change our original plan into something else, and to be flexible and, you know, transform things into even greater things with small amount of money, but a lot of creativity instead.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about this unacknowledged labor in all of this, these weird sort of elements.
And like, I love working with many people, but if you only work with other freelance artists, then they all have various working hours. And it's so hard to find, like, for example, today I'm going to have a meeting afterwards. And it's on a Sunday.
We're doing
okay,
this
we're also doing this on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But, like, it's so hard to find the time. And then, of course, it will often happen on a Saturday or Sunday. And do we take our time off then on Monday? Or how do we compensate that? Or are we just continuing in the same path of working 24/7?
And also I think it's very hard to, some people don't, to keep on holding some things up as work, maybe. Because so many things don't, I think for some people it doesn't look like work. Like coming and talking to somebody Is that doing some work? You know, like, and then you can always say, well, yeah, of course, a meeting is a work.
Yeah.
Like, all of these things are work.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many things in the art world where they're not seen as work at all. Like, the hours I spent sending several emails to these people
it's
isn't...
invisible.
That's invisible. Yeah, invisible labour. But but bringing this back to your work, actually, again, do you think your work is about figuring out ways around situations? Like, when you're aiming with your work? Because I recently... So I saw your work that you've got on at the moment.
Yeah.
And in some ways you were setting something up for the performers to make some choices and see what happens when they sort of followed you or didn't follow what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I was curious about that, this sort of...
Challenging the system. Yeah. So I can just briefly say that what I've been working on the last year is what I called a choreographical manuscript, a study of choices. And what I made was basically a manuscript which is recorded and put into a sound landscape where there are different dancers each night performing the performance, not knowing in beforehand what the instructions for the piece will be. So of course the result is always different, and as an audience you get to see the different choices and the different interpretations that the dancers make. And for me, that's, in a way, I never thought of it, or you putting it into words that I find interesting, because maybe I am trying to figure things. Yeah, of course I'm trying to figure things out in a new way. I'm also trying to highlight the dancers' capabilities and abilities that a dancer has gained over years of experience, if you're into improvisation, for example. And I think there are so many power structures within choreography and dance, and some are not so visible, and I just need to be aware that when I'm in the position of a choreographer, there is always this power dynamics that I ask a lot of these dancers, and normally dancers are so fostered into doing what they're being told. So I'm constantly asking how we can make room for more freedom, and that we need to, because I'm also a dancer, so I have all these roles, but the older I get, the more I realize where my boundaries as a dancer is also. Like, I don't always have to say yes, and I can ask questions. And for examples, when I tried to prepare the dancers by email mainly, and say, like, I'm not gonna... this will be a pleasant experience, I hope, and I will try to put this in a nice frame for you. But most of them asked, like, okay, but... Or they had concerns like, will we have to get naked? Can the instructions be like, do I have to sing? Do I have to put my body in mold, or what? Or in clay, I mean. Or like, what will these instructions be? And I think that is so important to address, that these structures that we have from a long history of this relationship towards a choreographer that is a bit higher up in the hierarchy than you are. So I think those dynamics needs to be looked at and can be in a very healthy balance if it's always a discussion. And I think, for example, many choreographers today acknowledge that it's not only them who made the choreography, but often in cooperation with the dancers. And I think that some things have shifted for the better. But I think in this piece, I've been thinking a lot about how do we highlight the dancers and their own integrity and their own possibility to make choices, which I think is really something I want to see in others' work more often.
Somebody making an active choice in the moment, you mean? Or just that to highlight that this relationship isn't I tell you what to do and you do it.
Yeah, I think there's something about that. And just give the dancers more authority on stage. I find that interesting.
And do you feel it's interesting doing that, because so did you go through rehearsals with that first with these dancers, or did they on the performance were they performing straight from what you had said, you know, because you had this recorded message and then they followed that recorded message or interpreted it in the way that they felt?
They didn't have any they just arrived 2 hours before.
Okay.
And we basically told them not to be stressed about, like they could have their own, like they should trust their own choices. And we gave them time to, on stage, to warm up and feel the space and just give them actually the first 2 instructions we gave them for them to feel comfortable to the format of the piece. So yeah, in a way they didn't know much.
Didn't know where it was going.
All. No.
But you had kind of reassured them.
Yeah, we had like a nice talk, and we also talked about being true to your body and its physical like limitations today. Like you don't always have to be on top to be a dancer. Like you can be an injured dancer but still be a dancer. And how do you work with that body that day? I think that's also good to acknowledge, which is not always the case depending on where in which context you dance, of course.
Where you're who your choreographer is, I guess.
But this is also something I learned during the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, I've always been told to like, or there's this mentality of dancers that, yeah, I'm injured, but I'm just gonna go through this and work my way through the pain.
Like a hardening up sort of idea.
Yeah.
Quite a macho concept in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think comes a bit from the ballet training or the athlete training where we don't talk about injuries and what the body can learn from injuries. And just, it's interesting. We're working with the body, but sometimes we're not listening to what the body really is telling us.
Already says, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go back a little bit because I was curious about saying that you had learnt how to question things, how to start making choices, how to do these things in those moments. And I was curious about that it was a thing that you had to do as you got older.
Yeah.
and I was curious, was there something in the way of you asking these questions before, or was it just how did you learn to ask questions, to say, no, actually, I'm not going to do this? And
well, actually, I learned it very hands-on by a dance company called Spin here in Gothenburg, and they work with inclusive dance. You can also say integrated dance. There are different terms for it. And it comes from this idea of, integrated dance is dance for people with and without disabilities. And to look at the body as different abled, depending on where you're at. Like, your body's not a constant body, but it actually changes with aging and through injuries, or actually no one's body is exactly the same. And so working with them, and I got employed as a dance teacher through their sister organization, Sprong, and where I was teaching dance for people in different ages with different bodies. And that's when I also learned a lot about my own body, and that it was okay to do things differently when, for example, my foot was not well for half a year. I got injured. And so I had to learn through that process. And then that was the time that I realized that this is something I haven't learned before. I've always been continuing through pain and believing that there is just one aesthetic. But then when you Google inclusive dance, you find that there are so many ways of working with your body, no matter how your body looks like. And that has affected me quite a lot. And it takes time and practice, I think, to learn those things. But that also has affected all of my work and how I look at bodies on stage.
Oops, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in the game. Ooh, baby, baby, oops, you think I'm in love, that I'm sent from above. Hey little boys, your mommy home. Did you go away, leaving all alone? Oh, I've got a bad side. Oh, I'm inside. Tell me, baby, it's so good to me. Did you do this fall into? Oh, I can take you higher. Oh, I'm on fire. Oh, I'm on fire. Oops, I did it again.
think as a dancer in Gothenburg, it's really hard to be just a dancer. So most people, actually, I've always had the interest to choreograph myself, because in that way I get things done.
Yeah.
I get things to happen if I'm a choreographer. And I think I would work much more as a dancer if there were more jobs for it. But I think actually that I'm benefiting of having all these 3 roles as a dance teacher, choreographer, and a dancer. And I think when I'm in one of these positions, I also feel the urge, or I know the need of the other 2 positions. So I can easily go into what it's like being the dancer if I'm also a choreographer. And try to somehow make sure everyone in the room feels good about the conditions. Maybe I'm taking responsibility too much for what is going on in the room.
But then I think it's very difficult to know, where does your responsibility end?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's interesting because you set up this premise with the last one with choices.
Yeah.
But then, are you responsible for the barriers and the restrictions that you've given to these dancers about the choices they can make?
Yeah.
And then, so that feeling of who you're responsible for, and I think it's come up, I think, quite a few times in different artists talking about their responsibility to the audience.
Yeah.
Like, how am I responsible if I bring them in, if I put them in a difficult state of mind, am I responsible for them leaving feeling sad or uncertain, or and when I talk about choice, it's like, am I talking about simple choices, like, what am I doing today, or I'm acknowledging that I have the freedom of choice in these moments, and some people might not have the freedom of choice. So it's like, where does your responsibility end in that situation?
Yeah.
I think that's really tough, actually, to know. And I sometimes wonder if it's a denial of, you have to at some point do a denial of responsibility to make anything.
I mean, I think that in this last production I did, I felt more responsibility towards the dancers somehow. I felt, and maybe that's just me, but I felt that I had a responsibility to tell them that you're actually free to break the rules, you're free to be who you are, you're free to not please me as a choreographer. So I actually wrote those things down, and I wrote them a letter telling them that now I've given you this manuscript, but it's not mine anymore, and now it's yours. But then I actually, it's hard not to think about the audience and what they're gonna think. And when someone's making a review, how much responsibility do I take for their opinions, or should I just let go? It's really interesting when you get a review and you can't really talk back to that person, or like have a discussion, or sometimes you want to like, I just want to explain what you thought here, but then again, like, I think I just need to rest in the fact that it's really nice that they show up, but then I should not care too much about what one person is thinking, no matter if it's right or if it's a good review or not, or what the audience are thinking. Because art evokes a lot of things in people. And somehow you have a responsibility, but yeah, maybe we could also educate a lot more about art, I feel. For the audience to feel more safe. And not feel stupid. There are so many times where people afterwards are like, I don't know if I understood this right. And then I just want to say, of course you understood this right, because you understood it with all your luggage and all your emotions and all your experiences. I'm sure we're not experiencing life the same way.
No.
And not this piece of art either.
So in this last bit, I was just thinking maybe I should ask you about the humour in all this. And do you feel humorous about your work?
I haven't thought about that. I think maybe it comes up at some point. But it's not... I haven't thought about it in that way. I mean, the lamp film that I made, in a way, it is a quite serious question, because this lamp is talking a lot about who they are and what it is to be a lamp, and what are the objectives and struggles being a lamp, as it is being a person or being coded into a specific norm or gender, for example. And in a way, this lamp has it's kind of a funny character, because it's so absurd that this lamp with a long coat being in the laundry room talking to itself. I mean, it is kind of absurd and funny. But it also has like a really difficult issue in mind, or it brings up hard questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think humor can help us to ask the big questions. And maybe sometimes it's easier to address them from that angle. Will you maybe play the recording that I sent?
Yes.
Then of course there's a lot of humor in it. So I have to rethink my whole identity as an artist now. Maybe I am just a female trickster after all. Just not admitting quite.
I mean, the problem I'm having
yet.
actually, since I've been starting to do all this research and talk to people, what I'm discovering is that we're all tricksters, and it's really difficult to be like, okay, because that feels quite almost embarrassing to be just like, we've all got tricksters within us. And
you made me discover it today.
so as I'm going forward, I'm mostly just being like, and you're a trickster, and you're a trickster, and so are you.
Yeah, brilliant. But you could have a crash course discovering your inner female trickster.
Today's discussion was with Linda Wardal and me, Danielle Heath. The sound work and editor was Therese Larson.